Maria had always been the kind of person who went above and beyond to make others feel special. She believed that small acts of kindness could turn an ordinary day into something extraordinary. Whether it was baking cookies for her coworkers, surprising her best friend with a thoughtful gift, or leaving sweet notes in unexpected places, Maria poured her heart into everything she did. But this time, she wanted to do something bigger, something truly unforgettable, for Liam. Liam was different from anyone Maria had ever met. He wasn't flashy or loud. Instead, he carried a quiet charm that drew people toward him. His laughter was warm, his words were thoughtful, and his presence made even the most mundane moments feel meaningful. They had only been dating for 6 months, but Maria already knew that Liam held a special place in her life. Their connection felt real, deep, and unshakable. So when she heard about the annual family reunion at his aunt's countryside home, she saw it as the perfect chance to surprise him. The idea came to her one evening while they were sitting on her couch scrolling through photos on his phone. Liam showed her pictures from previous reunions, big group shots of smiling faces, kids running around in fields, and plates piled high with homemade food. "It's my favorite weekend of the year," he said with a nostalgic smile. "Everyone gets together and we just laugh. No stress, no worries." Maria listened intently, imagining what it must be like to be part of such a close-knit family. Growing up as an only child, she often envied people who had siblings or cousins to share their lives with. Seeing Liam talk about his relatives made her want to experience that joy herself, and maybe give him a memory he'd never forget. Over the next few days, Maria threw herself into planning every detail of her surprise visit. First, she checked the date of the reunion and cleared her schedule, making sure nothing would interfere with her plans. Then she started thinking about how to make her arrival extra special. She decided to bake Liam's favorite cookies, chocolate, chip with a hint of cinnamon, and packed them neatly in a decorative tin. To add a personal touch, she tied a ribbon around the tin and attached a handwritten note. "For the man who makes my world brighter." Next, she prepared her outfit, choosing something casual yet stylish. A cozy sweater paired with jeans and ankle boots. She wanted to look approachable but put together, knowing that first impressions mattered, especially when meeting someone's family for the first time. Finally, she wrote a short speech in her journal, jotting down all the reasons why Liam meant so much to her. It wasn't fancy or polished, but it came straight from her heart. She hoped it would show him just how much she cared. On the morning of the trip, Maria woke up early, too excited to sleep. She double-checked her bag to ensure she hadn't forgotten anything important: her overnight clothes, toiletries, snacks, for the road, and of course the cookies. As she drove toward the countryside, the cityscape gradually gave way to rolling hills and open fields. The air smelled fresher here, tinged with the earthy scent of fallen leaves. Autumn was in full swing, painting the landscape in shades of gold, orange, and red. Every twist and turn of the road seemed to bring her closer to Liam, heightening her anticipation. When she reached the outskirts of the town where his aunt lived, Maria pulled over to park her car a few streets away. She didn't want to spoil the element of surprise by arriving directly at the house. Instead, she grabbed the cookie tin and her small suitcase, then began walking briskly along the quiet country roads. The sound of her footsteps echoed softly against the pavement, blending with the distant chirping of birds and rustling of leaves. As she approached the farmhouse, Maria couldn't help but marvel at its charm. It was a classic countryside home, complete with a wraparound porch, flower boxes bursting with late-season blooms, and tall oak trees framing the property. Laughter and music drifted through the windows, mingling with the crisp autumn breeze. The atmosphere felt lively and welcoming, exactly as Liam had described it. For a moment, Maria paused outside the gate, taking it all in. This was it. The culmination of her hard work and careful preparation. All she had to do now was knock on the door and watch Liam's face light up with surprise. Yet despite her excitement, a tiny flicker of nervousness crept into her mind. What if the surprise didn't go as planned? What if Liam's family thought she was being too forward by showing up unannounced? Shaking off these doubts, Maria reminded herself why she was doing this. Love wasn't about playing it safe, it was about taking risks, showing vulnerability and letting someone know they mattered. With renewed determination, she stepped onto the porch, adjusted the ribbon on the cookie tin one last time, and knocked lightly on the wooden door. Standing there waiting for someone to answer, Maria felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her: excitement, anticipation, and just a pinch of uncertainty. Little did she know this simple act of love was about to lead her down a path she hadn't anticipated. The knock echoed softly against the wooden door, and for a brief moment Maria held her breath. She could hear faint footsteps approaching from inside the house, accompanied by the muffled hum of conversation and laughter drifting through the walls. Her heart raced as she adjusted her grip on the cookie tin, ensuring it looked perfect. This was it, the moment she had been planning for days. A middle-aged woman opened the door, her face lighting up with a warm smile that instantly put Maria at ease. The woman wore an apron dusted with flour, suggesting she'd been busy in the kitchen preparing food for the gathering. "Oh, hello there," she exclaimed, her voice cheerful and inviting. "You must be here for the reunion, come on in." Maria hesitated for a split second, unsure whether to introduce herself or play along with the element of surprise. Before she could respond, the woman added, "Liam's family is just inside. I'll let him know you're here." Then turning slightly toward the living room, she called out loudly, "Liam, there's someone here for you." Maria felt a rush of excitement course through her veins. She imagined Liam's reaction when he saw her standing there, his eyes widening in disbelief, followed by that familiar grin that always made her stomach flutter. She pictured him rushing over to hug her, maybe even spinning her around like he sometimes did when they were alone. These thoughts brought a shy smile to her lips as she stepped into the cozy entryway. The interior of the farmhouse was exactly as charming as its exterior. Warm sunlight streamed through lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the hardwood floors. The air smelled of freshly baked bread and simmering spices, mingling with the faint aroma of wood smoke from a nearby fireplace. In the corner of the living room, a group of children played with toys while adults chatted animatedly, their voices rising and falling like waves. A record player in the background emitted soft melodies of classic folk songs, adding to the nostalgic ambiance. As Maria entered further into the house, she scanned the room for Liam. At first, she didn't see him. He wasn't among the cluster of people chatting near the dining table, nor was he helping set up chairs in the adjacent sitting area. Just as she began to wonder where he might be, her gaze landed on a figure seated on the couch. It was Liam. But something about the scene stopped her in her tracks. He wasn't alone. Beside him sat a young woman with long, wavy hair and a bright smile. They were leaning close to each other, their heads tilted inward as if sharing a private joke. The intimacy of the moment struck Maria immediately. One of Liam's hands rested casually on the woman's knee, while hers covered his, their fingers intertwined in a way that looked natural and comfortable. Maria blinked, trying to process what she was seeing. Was this normal? Did families interact like this during reunions? Before she could fully wrap her mind around the situation, Liam glanced up and noticed her standing there. His expression shifted instantly, from relaxed amusement to wide-eyed shock. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Maria stood rooted to the spot, clutching the cookie tin tightly, her knuckles turning white. The cheerful chatter in the room faded into a distant hum as all sound seemed to dull around her. Liam quickly pulled his hand away from the woman's, his face flushing red. He stared at Maria, clearly caught off guard, and stammered, Maria? What are you doing here?" The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded with implications. Maria's mind raced. Shouldn't he be happy to see her? Why did he sound so guilty? She forced herself to take a step forward, though her legs felt like lead. "I wanted to surprise you," she managed to say, her voice trembling slightly. I thought you'd be happy." By now, the entire room had fallen silent. Conversations halted mid-sentence, forks clinked quietly against plates, and curious eyes turned toward Maria. She hated being the center of attention, especially under circumstances like these. All she wanted was to disappear, to rewind the clock and undo the last few minutes. But it was too late for that. Liam stood up abruptly, leaving the woman still seated on the couch. He moved toward Maria, his movements hurried yet awkward. "It's not what it looks like," he said quickly, his tone pleading. "This is Emily. She's my cousin. We haven't seen each other in years and we were just catching up." Maria nodded slowly, though her expression remained guarded. Cousin? That explanation made sense, but something still didn't sit right with her. If Emily was truly family, why hadn't Liam mentioned her before? Why hadn't anyone else introduced her earlier? And why had their body language seemed so intimate? Emily, sensing the tension in the room, stood up as well. She offered Maria a tentative smile, her demeanor polite but cautious. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Emily. You must be Maria." Maria swallowed hard, forcing herself to return the greeting. "Yes, hi," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nice to meet you." For a moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched on uncomfortably, broken only by the faint crackle of the fireplace. Maria's mind buzzed with questions, doubts, and conflicting emotions. She had driven hours to get here, poured her heart into planning this surprise, and now everything felt wrong. Had she misjudged Liam? Or was there more to this story than she realized? Finally, Liam broke the silence. "Let's go outside," he suggested, gesturing toward the front porch. "We can talk privately." Maria hesitated again, glancing between Liam and Emily. Part of her wanted to refuse, to demand answers right then and there, but another part knew that stepping outside might give her the clarity she desperately needed. With a deep breath, she nodded and followed him out the door, leaving behind the prying eyes and stifling atmosphere of the living room. As they stepped onto the porch, the cool autumn breeze brushed against Maria's cheeks, offering a small measure of relief. She set the cookie tin down on a nearby bench and crossed her arms, hugging herself tightly. Though she tried to appear calm, her insides churned with uncertainty. Whatever happened next would determine not only the rest of her day but also the future of her relationship with Liam. Liam turned to face her, his expression a mixture of guilt and desperation. "Maria, please believe me," he began, his voice low and urgent. "Emily really is my cousin. We grew up together, but we lost touch after she moved away. Seeing her again today, it was emotional, sure, but nothing more than that. I swear." Maria searched his eyes for any sign of dishonesty, but all she saw was sincerity. Still, trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt in an instant. She took a shaky breath and asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. "Why didn't you tell me about her? About your family?" Liam sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. he admitted. I guess I never thought to bring it up. It's not like I was hiding anything, it's just complicated. Complicated. That word echoed in Maria's mind, leaving her more confused than ever. Could relationships really be summed up in such a vague term? As much as she wanted to accept Liam's explanation, she couldn't ignore the unease gnawing at her gut. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but one thing was certain. Communication and honesty would be key to moving forward. Maria stood on the porch, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if trying to shield her heart from the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. The cool autumn breeze tugged at her sweater, but she barely noticed. Her mind was racing, replaying the scene she had walked in on just moments ago. Liam's words hung in the air. It's not what it looks like. But no matter how many times he repeated them, they didn't erase the image burned into her memory. His hand resting casually on Emily's knee, their fingers intertwined, their laughter soft and intimate. Liam stepped closer, his hands outstretched as if pleading for her to understand. Maria, I'm serious, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Emily is my cousin. We grew up together, spent summers at my grandparents' house running wild in the fields. But after she moved away with her mom, we lost touch. Seeing her again today, it felt like reconnecting with a piece of my childhood. Maria wanted to believe him. She truly did. But something about the situation still didn't sit right. If Emily was family, why hadn't Liam mentioned her before? Why hadn't anyone else introduced her earlier? And most importantly, why had their body language seemed so close? It wasn't just about the physical gestures. It was the ease between them, the way they leaned into each other as if the world around them didn't exist. I don't get it, Maria finally said, her voice quiet but laced with frustration. If she's your cousin, why didn't you tell me about her? You've talked about your family before, but you never mentioned her, not once. Liam sighed heavily, dropping his gaze to the wooden planks beneath their feet. He looked conflicted, torn between guilt and defensiveness. I don't know, he admitted after a pause. Maybe because it's complicated. My dad and Emily's mom, they're siblings, but they haven't always been close. There was some tension when Emily's parents split up and things got messy. I guess I stopped thinking about her as part of my life. Until now. Maria frowned, processing his explanation. Family drama wasn't uncommon, and she could see how unresolved issues might make someone hesitant to talk about certain relatives. Still, it didn't fully explain why Liam had acted the way he did, or why he hadn't prepared her for this visit. But even if that's true, she pressed, why didn't you say anything about her coming today? You knew I was planning to surprise you. Wouldn't it have made sense to warn me? Liam ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling to find the right words. You're right, he conceded. I should have told you. I didn't think it would be a big deal. When Emily showed up, it caught me off guard, too. We started talking, reminiscing about old times, and I guess I got carried away. I wasn't thinking about how it might look to someone walking in. His honesty was both reassuring and frustrating. On one hand, Maria appreciated that he wasn't trying to dodge responsibility or sugarcoat the situation. On the other hand, his lack of foresight stung. How could he not realize how hurtful this moment would be for her? Hadn't he considered her feelings at all? Before she could respond, the front door creaked open behind them. Emily stepped onto the porch, her expression apologetic. Hey, she said softly, glancing between Liam and Maria. I just wanted to check if everything's okay. I feel terrible about what happened back there. Maria turned to face her, studying her carefully. Up close, Emily looked younger than Maria had initially thought, early 20s maybe. Her wavy hair framed a friendly face, and her eyes held a genuine warmth that made it hard to dislike her. Still, Maria couldn't shake the lingering discomfort she felt. "It's fine," Maria replied, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I just wasn't expecting this." Emily nodded sympathetically. "I can imagine. Look, I know how it must have seemed, but I promise you there's nothing going on between me and Liam. He's like a brother to me, always has been. Today was just emotional. We haven't seen each other in years, and catching up brought back a lot of memories." Her sincerity seemed genuine, but Maria found herself questioning whether she was being too quick to trust. Was Emily telling the truth, or was she simply smoothing over an awkward situation? Maria had always prided herself on being a good judge of character, but right now her instincts felt clouded. Liam chimed in, sensing the tension. "Emily's telling the truth," he insisted. "She means a lot to me, but only as family. Nothing more." Maria let out a slow breath, trying to steady her nerves. She knew she had two choices. She could either walk away right now, letting doubt and hurt dictate her actions, or she could stay and give Liam and Emily a chance to prove themselves. Walking away would be easier, safer even, but deep down, Maria didn't want to give up on Liam without giving him a fair shot to explain. "Okay," she said finally, her voice softer now. "I'll stay for now, but I need you to be honest with me moving forward, no more surprises." Relief washed over Liam's face, and he nodded earnestly. "Thank you, Maria. I promise I'll do better." Emily smiled gratefully. "And I'll make sure to introduce myself properly next time," she added with a light laugh, attempting to break the tension. "No more mysterious entrances." Despite herself, Maria managed a small smile. Maybe things weren't as bad as they seemed. Maybe this was just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by timing and circumstance. As they headed back inside, Maria reminded herself to keep an open mind. Love wasn't perfect. It came with challenges, miscommunications, and moments of doubt. What mattered most was how they chose to handle those moments. Back in the living room, the atmosphere had shifted slightly. Some of the guests glanced curiously at Maria, likely wondering what had transpired outside, but others quickly resumed their conversations and activities. A little girl tugged at Emily's sleeve, asking her to join a game of hide-and-seek, while an older man called Liam over to help carry trays of food from the kitchen. For a brief moment, the chaos of the reunion provided a welcome distraction, allowing Maria to collect her thoughts. As she wandered through the house, taking in the cozy decor and lively chatter, she realized something important. Relationships weren't built on perfection. They were built on trust, communication, and the willingness to work through difficult moments together. This trip may not have gone as planned, but perhaps it was exactly what Maria and Liam needed. A wake-up call to address the cracks in their foundation before they grew any wider. With renewed determination, Maria decided to give the day another chance. She wouldn't let one uncomfortable moment overshadow the effort she'd put into surprising Liam, or the potential for growth in their relationship. After all, sometimes the hardest lessons were also the most valuable ones. As the afternoon wore on, Maria found herself easing back into the rhythm of the reunion, though her earlier unease lingered like a shadow at the edges of her mind. She had agreed to stay, for now, but that didn't mean all her doubts had vanished. Every glance between Liam and Emily, every shared laugh or lingering conversation, felt like a test she was trying to pass. Could she truly believe them? Was this just an innocent family bond, as they claimed? Or was there something deeper beneath the surface? To distract herself, Maria decided to immerse herself in the festivities. The farmhouse buzzed with energy, each room alive with its own unique activity. In the kitchen, women chopped vegetables and stirred pots, their laughter blending with the clinking of utensils. Outside, children chased each other around the yard, their giggles carrying on the breeze. On the porch, a group of older relatives sat rocking chairs, swapping stories about days gone by. It was impossible not to feel drawn into the warmth of it all. Emily, sensing Maria's effort to adjust, made a point to include her in conversations. At first, Maria was hesitant, unsure how to act around someone who had so recently shaken her confidence. But Emily's genuine friendliness soon began to break down the walls Maria had subconsciously built. "So you're the famous Maria," Emily said with a playful grin as they stood near the dessert table. "Liam talks about you all the time." Maria raised an eyebrow, surprised. "He does?" "Oh, absolutely," Emily replied, nodding enthusiastically. "He couldn't stop raving about your cooking skills last Christmas. Said you make the best lasagna he's ever had." This revelation caught Maria off guard. She had known Liam, appreciated her efforts in the kitchen, but hearing that he bragged about her to his family was unexpected and oddly comforting. For the first time since arriving, she allowed herself to relax a little. Maybe Emily wasn't the villain Maria's imagination had painted her to be. Their conversation continued naturally, shifting from food to hobbies to travel. Emily spoke fondly of her childhood summers spent at her grandparents' farm, describing long days spent fishing in the creek and climbing trees with Liam. "We used to get into so much trouble," she recalled with a chuckle. "Once we tried to build a treehouse and it collapsed halfway through. Liam ended up with a huge bruise on his leg, and my mom grounded us both for a week." Maria laughed despite herself, picturing a younger, scrappier version of Liam covered in dirt and bruises. It was easy to see why he and Emily were close. They clearly shared a history filled with adventure and mischief. Listening to her talk, Maria began to understand why Liam might have gotten carried away during their reunion. Their connection wasn't romantic. It was rooted in nostalgia, in memories of a simpler time before life pulled them in different directions. Meanwhile, Liam stayed nearby, keeping a watchful eye on Maria. He seemed eager to prove himself, offering small gestures of reassurance whenever possible. When Maria reached for a plate of cookies, he appeared beside her holding a napkin. When she hesitated before joining a game of charades, he gently encouraged her to give it a try. His attentiveness didn't go unnoticed, and while it didn't completely erase her lingering doubts, it did remind her of why she had fallen for him in the first place. The turning point came during dinner. The large dining table groaned under the weight of countless dishes: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, steamed vegetables, cranberry sauce, and pies stacked high. Everyone gathered around, passing plates and sharing jokes, the kind of chaotic yet joyful scene Maria had only seen in movies. As they ate, Emily took the opportunity to share more stories about Liam's childhood, much to Maria's amusement. "Do you remember the time you got stuck in the apple tree?" Emily teased, pointing her fork at Liam. "You refused to climb down until someone brought you a ladder." Liam groaned, burying his face in his hands. "I was 10, he protested, eliciting laughter from the entire table. "And it wasn't my fault, the branches were slippery." Maria watched the exchange with growing curiosity. There was no malice in Emily's teasing, no hidden agenda behind her words. Instead, she seemed genuinely delighted to reconnect with her cousin after so many years apart. Slowly, Maria began to let go of her suspicions. If anything, Emily's presence highlighted just how important family was to Liam, and how much he valued those connections. After dinner, The group moved to the living room for dessert and coffee. Someone suggested playing a game of trivia, and soon everyone was divided into teams, competing fiercely for bragging rights. Maria found herself paired with Liam and Emily, which initially made her nervous. But as the game progressed, she realized how seamlessly the three of them worked together. Emily's quick wit complemented Liam's strategic thinking, while Maria's sharp memory helped them secure several winning answers. By the end of the night, they were laughing and cheering like old friends. It was during these moments that Maria noticed a shift within herself. The initial shock and jealousy she had felt upon arriving were gradually giving way to acceptance and even gratitude. Yes, the day had started with confusion and hurt, but it had also given her a chance to see a side of Liam she hadn't fully understood before, his love for his family, his ability to form deep bonds, and his eagerness to mend things when they went wrong. All of these qualities reminded her why she cared about him so deeply. As the evening drew to a close, Maria found herself sitting, alone on the porch, staring out at the starlit sky. The crisp air wrapped around her like a blanket, soothing her frazzled nerves. Behind her, the sounds of cleanup and goodbyes drifted through the open windows, signaling the end of a long but eventful day. Liam joined her a few minutes later, settling into the chair beside hers. "How are you holding up?" he asked softly, his voice tinged with concern. Maria hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I'm okay," she admitted. "Better than I was earlier anyway. Today, it was a lot. But I think I needed this. I needed to see where you come from, who you are outside of just being with me." Liam nodded, relief washing over his features. "I'm sorry if I made you feel like you weren't part of that world," he said earnestly. "You are. In fact, you're one of the most important parts of my life. I should have done a better job of including you, of making sure you knew that." Maria smiled faintly, touched by his sincerity. "I appreciate that," she replied. "But I also think we both learned something today. Relationships take work, not just the big gestures, but the little things too. Communication, honesty, trust, those are what keep people together." Liam reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "You're right," he murmured. "And I promise, I'll do better. No more surprises. Or at least, none like this one." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars twinkle above the treetops. Though the day hadn't unfolded as Maria had envisioned, it had taught her something valuable. Love wasn't about avoiding challenges. It was about facing them head-on and growing stronger because of them. As they prepared to leave the next morning, Maria felt a renewed sense of hope, not just for her relationship with Liam, but for the future they could build together. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, with the golden rays of sunlight filtering through the trees surrounding the farmhouse. Maria woke up early, lying quietly in the guest room bed, as she replayed the events of the previous day in her mind. It had been a whirlwind of emotions: shock, confusion, hurt, and eventually understanding. Though she still carried a lingering sense of vulnerability, she couldn't deny that something inside her had shifted. She felt lighter, as if the weight of her doubts had begun to lift. Downstairs, the house was already buzzing with activity. The reunion wasn't officially over yet, but many guests were beginning to pack up and say their goodbyes. Children clung to their parents' legs, begging for 5 more minutes of playtime, while adults exchanged hugs and promises to stay in touch. Maria wandered into the kitchen, where Emily was helping clean up the remnants of last night's feast. "Morning." Emily greeted her warmly, handing her a steaming mug of coffee. "Sleep okay?" Maria nodded, taking a sip of the rich aromatic brew. "Yeah, thanks, you've got a beautiful home here." Or at least your aunt does. Emily laughed lightly, wiping down the counter. It's definitely special. This place has seen so many family gatherings over the years. I think it's magic. It brings people together even when they've drifted apart. Her words struck a chord with Maria. In a way, the farmhouse had done exactly that for her and Liam. Their relationship had faced its first real test, and though it hadn't been easy, they had come out on the other side stronger. Or at least, with a clearer understanding of what needed to change. As the morning wore on, Maria found herself spending more time with Emily. They chatted about everything from favorite books to travel plans, discovering shared interests they hadn't expected. At one point, Emily pulled out an old photo album filled with pictures from her childhood summers with Liam. Maria marveled at the images. A grinning Liam covered in mud after falling into a creek, a gap-toothed Emily proudly holding up a bucket, of freshly picked apples, the two of them posing triumphantly beside a makeshift fort made of sticks and blankets. You guys really were inseparable, Maria remarked, flipping through the pages. We were, Emily agreed, her tone nostalgic. But life happens, you know. People grow up, move away, lose touch. That's why days like this are so important. They remind us of who we are and where we come from. Maria nodded thoughtfully. For the first time, she realized how much Liam's connection to his family shaped him. His warmth, his loyalty, his ability to make others feel valued. All of these traits stemmed from the love and support he'd received growing up. Seeing him in this environment gave her a deeper appreciation for the man he was, and the potential their relationship held. By mid-morning, it was time to leave. Maria packed her things, careful not to forget the now empty cookie tin that had been such a symbol of her effort to surprise Liam. As they prepared to head out, Liam's relatives gathered around to bid them farewell. Hugs were exchanged, laughter echoed through the air, and heartfelt promises were made to meet again soon. Liam stood by Maria's side, his arm draped casually over her shoulder. Ready to go? He asked, his voice soft but steady. Maria took a deep breath, glancing around one last time at the cozy farmhouse and the faces of the people who meant so much to Liam. Yeah, she replied. Let's do it. The drive back home was peaceful, the countryside scenery rolling past in a blur of golds and greens. For the first half of the trip, they sat in companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. But as the miles ticked by, Maria decided it was time to address what had happened. Not just to clear the air, but to ensure they moved forward, on solid ground. So, she began hesitantly, keeping her eyes fixed on the road ahead. What happens now? Liam glanced at her, his brow furrowing slightly. What do you mean? I mean, how do we make sure something like this doesn't happen again? Maria clarified. I don't want to feel blindsided like that ever. Again. I need to know we're on the same page. Liam nodded slowly, clearly taking her words to heart. You're right, he said after a moment. And I get it. I messed up. I should have told you about Emily, about the reunion, about everything. I wasn't thinking, and I let my excitement about seeing her cloud my judgment. That's on me. Maria appreciated his honesty, but she pressed further. It's not just about Emily. It's about communication. If there's something important going on in your life, I need you to share it with me. No secrets, no assumptions, just openness. I can do that, Liam promised, his voice firm. And I'll work harder to include you in things. You're not just part of my present, you're part of my future. I want you to feel like you belong. His words brought tears to Maria's eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. She knew relationships weren't perfect and challenges would always arise. But hearing Liam acknowledge his mistakes and commit to doing better gave her hope that they could overcome anything together. As they neared the city limits, Maria turned to him with a small smile. "Thank you for listening. And for letting me be part of your world even when it gets messy." Liam grinned, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "Messy is kind of our thing, isn't it?" They both laughed, the tension melting away like frost under the morning sun. By the time they reached Maria's apartment, they felt closer than ever, not because everything had gone perfectly, but because they had faced imperfection head-on and chosen to grow from it. That evening, as Maria unpacked her bag and set the cookie tin back on her kitchen counter, she reflected on the journey she'd taken, not just physically but emotionally. The trip to Liam's aunt's house had started as an act of love, turned into a moment of doubt, and ultimately transformed into an opportunity for growth. Love, she realized, wasn't about avoiding storms. It was about learning to weather them together. And as she settled onto her couch with a cup of tea, watching the city lights twinkle outside her window, Maria felt grateful, not just for Liam, but for the lessons she had learned along the way. Some surprises may not go as planned, but sometimes the unexpected detours lead to the most beautiful destinations.